Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something I think you'll find pretty fascinating. We're going to be talking about the future of Hindu civilization, especially, in this crazy world that just keeps getting more and more complex.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic right now. This whole clash between these ancient traditions and modern pressures. It's definitely fascinating to try and see where things might be heading.
Totally. I've been doing a lot of reading lately about this Hindu phobia thing, and I got to say, some of the stuff I'm seeing out there is honestly pretty concerning.
Yeah, it's something we all need to be paying attention to. I mean, this pattern of violence and discrimination targeting Hindu communities, it's really disturbing, especially when it's just brushed aside or even sometimes justified.
Exactly.
You know?
There's this terror attack recently that really got to me. This 2-year-old child was deliberately targeted just because of their family's faith. Like, seriously, it makes you question that whole terrorism has no religion narrative.
Horrific. And that's just one example. You look at Kashmir. Almost 700,000 Hindus have been displaced from their homes over the last few decades. It's a crazy number that's totally overlooked in these discussions about refugees.
It's like people just don't want to acknowledge the suffering of Hindu communities. And it's not even just the violence. There's this professor of MC Juluri. He wrote this book called Rearming Hinduism. Really made me think. He talks about how Hindus are constantly being misrepresented and stereotyped. I mean, in the media, in academia, even in legal systems.
Juluri's argument for intellectual rearmament is definitely compelling. He says Hindus need to be able to counter these misrepresentations, challenge the biases behind them. He uses the film Slumdog Millionaire as a perfect example. Even something seemingly positive can actually reinforce negative stereotypes about Hinduism.
Oh man, Slumdog was like one of my favorite movies. Now we have to see it in a whole new light. Crazy how these subtle biases can just sneak into anything.
That's the thing about Hinduphobia. It's so pervasive that we don't even realize how normalized it's become. We really need to start critically examining the information we're consuming.
Okay, so what can we actually do about it? I mean, we can't just sit around and complain, right?
Right. There are some interesting ideas being discussed. Some people are talking about legal disarming, basically addressing laws and policies that are unfairly impacting Hindus. So, for example, there are concerns about certain conversion tactics used by other religions. And then there's also the need for equal protections for Hindu temples and institutions.
So making sure laws are applied equally and Hindus have the same rights and protections as everyone else? Yeah, that makes sense. But do you think political action is really enough to deal with these issues?
That's what a lot of people are saying. There's this growing frustration with inaction, this feeling that politicians are more focused on short-term gains than actual long-term solutions. It's like they're all waiting for someone else to make the first move.
Right. All talk and no action. It's discouraging. Remember that clip where the Supreme Court of India was basically begging people to protest? As if it was the citizens' responsibility to constantly push for change.
Yeah, that was pretty striking. Really shows you the limitations of relying on political systems. So the question becomes, if the traditional ways aren't working, what other options are there?
Okay, now I'm intrigued. You're talking about something radical. Because at this point, I'm open to anything.
Well, there are some interesting new initiatives popping up. They're taking a more proactive approach. One that's been getting a lot of attention is KAILASA.
KAILASA. Okay, that's a new one. Tell me more. I'm definitely curious. What is KAILASA?
Basically, it's a self-declared sovereign nation established by Hindus.
Hold on. A sovereign nation, is that even possible? Like, how do you just declare yourself a nation?
Bold move, for sure. But KAILASA is more than just an idea. They've actually been building a presence on the world stage. They've established diplomatic relations with a bunch of nations and indigenous groups, and they're actively involved in UN forums, submitting reports on human rights, minority rights, all kinds of global issues.
Wow, working with the UN, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But you said self-declared. So does that mean they're not officially recognized as a nation?
It's a bit more complicated than that. They haven't achieved universal recognition yet. But their juridical statehood, meaning their legal right to exist as a sovereign entity, that's actually been recognized by the UN multiple times.
Okay, now this is getting interesting. I'll admit I was skeptical at first, but you've definitely got my attention. So what's their end goal? What are they trying to achieve with this sovereign nation?
Their mission is to revive, preserve, and protect Hinduism. They're creating a safe haven for practitioners, and they're working really hard to ensure the rights and dignity of Hindus all over the world. They see themselves as a force for positive change, not just for Hindus, but for the whole world.
That's ambitious.
Yeah.
But how do they actually plan on doing that? What does this safe haven even look like? Are we talking about a physical place, or is it more like a concept?
They're working on establishing a physical presence, but it's more than just land. They're
Yeah.
building universities, temples, monasteries, all of it. It's like a living, breathing repository of Hindu civilization, where they can revive these ancient traditions and pass them on to future generations.
So like a cultural hub where people can really immerse themselves in Hindu heritage. That's pretty incredible.
Hmm.
But what about those who can't actually be there? Is there a way to connect with Kailasa from, say, anywhere in the world?
Oh, absolutely. They have a big online presence that offer tons of courses and programs. You can learn about Hindu scriptures, philosophy, yoga, meditation, all kinds of things. They're really using technology to make these teachings accessible to everyone.
That's really smart, like a virtual ashram breaking down those geographical
Yeah.
barriers. But I got to ask, what about the skeptics? There are always going to be people who question the legitimacy of a self-declared nation, right?
Of course, and being skeptical is important, but you have to look at the facts. Kailasa is actively engaging with the international community, building those diplomatic ties, participating in these global forums. They're not hiding. They're putting themselves out there and building relationships.
It's funny, we started this deep dive talking about the challenges facing Hindu civilization,
Yeah.
the violence, the discrimination, the misrepresentations. And now we're talking about a potential solution that's bold, innovative, and totally pro-Hindu. It's like a whole new way of thinking.
It is, and I think it really speaks to the resilience of the Hindu spirit. They're not just accepting things as they are, they're actively creating a new reality, one that celebrates their heritage and empowers them.
I'm pretty impressed. Kailasa is definitely making me rethink what's possible. But what about the practical stuff? Running a country is not easy. How are they managing the day-to-day operations, the logistics, the finances? It seems like a huge undertaking.
Oh, it is, and they're definitely still building, but they've attracted a really dedicated team of experts, lawyers, diplomats, educators, spiritual leaders, all committed to making this vision a reality.
So it's a real grassroots movement, driven by passionate people who believe in this vision. That's inspiring. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How's the rest of the world reacting to this? Have there been any big pushbacks or attempts to discredit Kailasa?
There's always going to be resistance to change, especially when it challenges the way things are usually done. And yeah, there have been attempts to discredit Kailasa, so people calling them illegitimate or even dangerous. But I think it's important to look past the words and focus on their actions.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, there have been accusations of them being a cult or a fraud. But when you look at what they're actually doing, their focus on human rights, their commitment to education, their work preserving these ancient traditions, those accusations just fall apart. They're actively contributing to the world in a positive and meaningful way.
So it's more about how people perceive them than what they're actually doing. Like they're being judged based on assumptions instead of the actual work.
Exactly, and I think that's something they'll continue to face. But as they build their presence, engage with the world transparently, and show the positive impact of their work, I think more and more people will see them for what they really are. A force for good, a champion for Hindu civilization, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needs it.
Wow. It feels like we're witnessing something historic here. Kailasa might be new, but they're already making a splash. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning.
I agree. They're shaking things up, challenging the old ways of thinking, and inspiring a new generation of Hindus. It's powerful.
This is definitely a lot to take in, but I'm excited to see how this all plays out. Kailasa is facing an uphill battle, but they're not giving up. They're committed and determined to make this happen.
It goes back to that rearming concept we talked about. Kailasa isn't just about defense. It's about creating a new future for Hindu civilization. They're taking control, setting their own terms, building something incredible.
I think a lot of people, no matter their faith or background, can connect with that. Taking control of your destiny, building a better future for your community.
Definitely. And that's why I think Kailasa's story is so fascinating. It's a story of resilience, innovation, and unwavering faith, and it's only just beginning.
So, wow, we've covered a lot today. We started with these really serious challenges facing Hindu civilization. The violence, the discrimination, all the negative stereotypes and biased narratives. Honestly, it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. Those challenges are real, and we need to address them. But what's so exciting about this conversation is that we've also found this potential solution, this glimmer of hope with Kailasa.
I agree. I was skeptical at first, I'll be honest. A sovereign nation, it sounded kind of crazy. But the more we've talked about it, the more impressed I am with what they're doing.
What stood out to you the most?
I think it's their proactive approach. They're not just sitting around waiting for things to change. They're taking charge, building something completely new, creating a space where Hindu civilization can not only survive, but actually flourish. It's really inspiring.
It is, and they're doing it on their own terms,
Right.
rooted in their values and traditions. It's such a powerful statement of self-determination. It makes you think differently about how to find solutions.
It definitely makes you rethink what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if people can create a sovereign nation from nothing, imagine what else we can achieve.
Exactly. Kailasa is proof that with vision, determination, and people working together, anything is possible. And even though they have challenges ahead, I think their story gives us hope. Not just for Hindus, but for anyone who wants to see a better future.
And their story's just getting started. I bet we'll be hearing a lot more about Kailasa in the coming years.
I think you're right. They're a force to be reckoned with, and their impact is only going to get bigger.
It makes you wonder how the rest of the world will react. Will they accept this new model or try to shut it down?
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But one thing's for sure, Kailasa is here to stay. They've already made their mark.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. What an incredible journey. I've learned so much.
Me too. Always great to explore new ideas and challenge our perspectives.
I encourage all of you listening to check out Kailasa for yourselves. Do your own research and form your own opinions. This is a story that deserves our attention, and it can really change the world.
Absolutely. And as always, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those minds working.
Until next time.